In 2011, South Africa was fast approaching its 20th year of democracy, one of the youngest democracies in the world. But during this time, there was a lot of protests, there was a lot of unrest. The media was filled with people that were generally just not happy with the direction the country was going. But was the country really moving out of its honeymoon period of democracy? Was everyone really unhappy? The media was mainly portraying things in some of the bigger centers, and every now and again you'd see some of the small sort of towns being portrayed. But I suddenly thought, I wonder if the rest of the country, all the small towns, all the places you don't often hear about, what were their feelings? What was working and what was not working? So it was with this in mind that I set out to try and see if I could spend a full year on the road, traveling around South Africa and visiting as many different towns, villages as possible, and meeting as many people as possible and finding out what was going on, what were the success stories, what were the challenges, what were the failures. So for 6 months, I set out and started planning a trip that was to take me around the perimeter of South Africa. So along the sort of the border areas, mapping out the shape of the country. And I wanted to stop off in as many towns as possible along that route and spend as much of 2012 on the road as possible. Looking back now, it was absolutely mind-blowing because I spent 250 days on the road and stopped off in 192 towns and managed to stay in 176 different accommodation establishments. And in doing so, identified and met with 101 different community and conservation projects. I don't think many countries in the world would have opened their doors and opened their arms as much as South Africa did during that year on the road. And one of the goals was to get re-inspired, and that's exactly what happened. I fell in love with my country all over again. And it was the warmth of the people that I suddenly realized was what everyone has been talking about when they come on holiday to South Africa. And as a South African, sometimes you don't really realize that until maybe you do something like this and you realize just how amazingly open and warm everyone is. Now, I wanted to tell the world about all these different towns that a lot of people didn't hear about and really just highlight some of the projects and some of the amazing tourism establishments that were trying to help me along the way. So I've spent the next 10 years promoting all of these projects and all of these tourism establishments that had helped me along that road as much as possible. And it wasn't just conservation projects that I found, but there were community projects, there were education projects, sports projects, health projects, art projects. There was so much. But it was the conservation projects that really captured my heart because that was where my main interest was. Now, I knew I would find a lot of wildlife out there. Everyone knows South Africa is just teeming with so much wildlife. But what I wasn't expecting was the amount of small projects, but also the amount of really passionate people that were so willing and open to share their information, their resources, their findings, and to try and collaborate, which I thought was fantastic. And in doing this journey in 2012, I started to identify exactly what the criteria were that I wanted the expedition project to go on to achieve, and the kind of projects that I wanted to most work with. And those criteria were things like community, collaboration, transparency, sustainable, ethical. And those were really important to me because this was a time, remember, where volunteer tourism had been doing really well and then started to get a really bad reputation. And a lot of conservation projects in doing so started to get a bad reputation. So I really wanted to be very specific about who I worked with. And after the year that we've had and all the difficulties we've had with COVID, there's so much uncertainty, not just in the world, but in conservation. So a lot of these organizations, they don't know what's around the corner. They don't know how much longer things can go on. What they do know is how passionate they are to continue. And this isn't always just about donations and funding. It's about people all over the world that share that passion and that are able to help them in any way that they can, be it promotions, be it social media, be it sharing those success stories, but also the challenges that need help. And I really, truly think the next 20, 30 years of the world is so crucial. And these are the people that are doing whatever they can to protect our ecosystems, to protect the wildlife that we value so much. So please do join us along this journey and enjoy this journey with me. Find out more about these amazing organizations. They really, truly are fantastic. Thank you so much.